Huskies is your host, Arantxa, joined today by fill-in host, Claire. Hi, Claire, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you, Arantxa?
I'm very good, thank you. Did you know that March 8th is the International Women's Day?
I did, although I feel like it always goes by really quickly without a way to sort of mark it. So I'm really excited to talk about it with you and our guest today.
I read that International Women's Day is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievement of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating women's equality.
Right. And in order to take a moment and discuss this important day and what it means, we are joined by Kizzy Rodney, who is the Director of External and Community Relations at GBC. Kizzy, thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks. And thank you for having me.
Of course.
Kizzy, what is your role at George Brown College?
Oh, well, thank you. So my role, I'm responsible for all of the external and community engagement opportunities for the college. And what that really means is it's about just increasing the profile and the presence of George Brown College within our communities. And it's all about creating more opportunities for our learners into the college, while also supporting industry needs, community needs, and also of benefit to George Brown College on a whole.
Have you been involved in any International Women's Days events or programming before at the college or elsewhere?
So no, I haven't been involved in anything specific to International Women's Day at the college or outside, but historically, during my post-secondary years or university days, I was involved with a organization called Women's Place that was really focused on supporting women who may be facing other barriers or challenges personally and professionally in their lives. So I did volunteer there for quite some time.
Wow, yeah. So I imagine you've experienced and gotten to know a lot of different women's perspectives over the course of your volunteering work there.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you've brought that to the college.
I appreciate this opportunity. I think, conversations like these begin to sort of break down those traditional gender roles and begin to blur those lines. And we just now have to continue to focus on these conversations and continue to seek out those opportunities and ways that we create more equity for women and gender equity on a whole, because it's only through conversation and through the multiplicity of voices that, things will begin to change.
Yeah, and I love how you said gender equity as a whole, because I think we need to keep an open mind about what we mean when we say women on International Women's Day, because there are cis women, there are trans women, there are people of all genders who face barriers due to sexism. So yeah, just kind of keeping that in mind as we talk and have these conversations.
According to the International Women's Day website, International Women's Day has occurred for well over a century, with the first gathering in 1911, supported by over 1 million people. Today, International Women's Day belongs to all groups collectively everywhere. International Women's Day is not a country, group, or organization specific. This last sentence seems to give permission for everyone to find a purpose within International Women's Day. What does that mean to you?
Well, thank you for that. International Women's Day for me is really about crossing all those arbitrary boundaries that have traditionally held us back as women, and these boundaries, across racial, ethnic, orientation, et cetera, those different types of lines. So for me, it's a reminder that women, they need to celebrate themselves irrespective of their backgrounds, because from my perspective, we are part of something that's so powerful and transformational as women. And we have so much value collectively and individually that creates what I have coined a term called the you, she, and me movement. And to me, the you, she, and me is really about that It's a trinity or a trifecta of healing and hope for women across all boundaries across the world. And it really signifies our bold growth in terms of how we come together and mobilize as women to break down those traditional barriers that have held us back. And so while we may be individuals living our separate lives across the world, I think there is common intersections at play when we think about our work, how we raise our families, the relationships that we engage in. And so there's really a bond or a collective bond that holds us together and elevates us in many different ways. So that's what International Women's Day is about for me.
Wow. Can you tell me more about this you, she, and me movement? Like, when did that start, or when did you come up with that, and what was the sort of origins of that?
I had a feeling you were going to ask me that. And it's, I'm an undercover blogger, so I don't have a site. So that if that was your next question, I don't put anything out publicly, but I have written an article and it's called the You, She, and Me movement. And it's just, the days that I just sort of reflect on where I've come, but how I really think that the things that I have experienced. So if you think about it, Claire, we may not know each other, but there is a very real possibility that some of the experiences that you have gone through, I may have gone through in a different way or different form. And I just think that intuitively, that there is these sort of unspoken connections between women, whether we know each other or not. And so I just coined this term, you, she, and me, because there's you, there's she, there's me, but we're all connected. While experiences might be different, we can draw on each other to learn from those and grow. That makes us very stronger as we come together in that trifecta or that trinity of hope, from my perspective.
Yeah, I like that, sort of naming those you, she, and me as a way to sort of like see how those people are a lot closer to you than you might imagine. Yeah. So the theme for International Women's Day this year is Embrace Equity. Sometimes equity can be confused with equality. Why, in your opinion, do you think that there's a call to embrace equity rather than equality?
So, those terms often are conflated or confused, and they are distinct in the sense that gender equity is more about getting to that level playing field or getting the resources that women deserve and should have opportunity to gain, which really in turn then corrects those imbalances that currently exist between genders or people of different genders. So inequality is important as well, but it really assumes or presumes that we are all starting with the same opportunities, the same benefits, or at the starting line, we're all starting at the same starting line. But we know that that's not the case. So, women's equity really takes into account that we all have different capacities, we have different skills, different experiences. We know that different opportunities are afforded to even different women within particular groups. So it's really about meeting people where they are, giving them the opportunities to build their skills, to build their capacities, to draw on their unique experiences that might differentiate even between women, so that we can eventually get to that same finish line. And so I was trying to think of an example. And so I think of one that sort of fits within my work at George Brown College. If you think about it, part of my portfolio is all about access to education. And there are some programs or even sectors within industries that are underrepresented by women. So equity is about, from my perspective, equity is about allowing for more representation in a particular sector. So maybe there's a specific skilled trade, by example, that has very little representation for women in that skilled trade. Equity is about then deliberately going out and attracting or talking to women's group, advocating for women to participate or get educated in this skilled trade so that we can increase representation. So that to me is an example of how equity is at play, where we see that there's lack of representation of women in something, and we create deliberate efforts to encourage or get more representation of women in that particular trade or industry.
Yeah, in order to level that playing field and make it available for women, we have to make an effort to reach out and draw in more women, because we've already created a society where it's not a level playing field.
Exactly.
So it's really just a matter of creating it in a different way, I guess.
Yeah.
Very nice also how you said about it's also to prepare everyone and all of us to get to that position, to get to that place.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think are some ways that George Brown students could embrace equity for and amongst women?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I really think that students can really just begin to be more intentional and really take stock of where they might see underrepresentation of women. And so, that could be anything from a club, a team like a sports team or even an academic team, and just advocate and just be vocal and know that there's a place and a voice to be heard in terms of breaking down the underrepresentation of women in certain pockets of the college. And while doing that, also looking to create conditions that allow women to feel welcomed in spaces and safe in spaces across the college, because that's also important to ensure that we can, one, attract women to certain clubs or whatever that may be, but ensuring that they're also safe spaces for them. And I think it's just about advocacy and awareness. It's both of those going together. So one, being aware of what that looks like and where you might see increased opportunities for women to showcase their skills, because we have many of them and we have many hidden talents. And sometimes we as women also get bogged down in sort of this thing called the imposter syndrome, but that's because of the conditions that we are met with as well. But many of the talents, the great talents across this college and the great ideas that are born within the college and within student bodies, et cetera, are within women. So we need to create opportunities for women to feel comfortable in showcasing who they are, their unique experiences, without any discrimination or any other challenges that are within their way.
That sounds great. I like that idea. And I think it's part of like being as a student and you have those safe space and you can also grow in those spaces because you have that experience, like maybe the experience that I have, maybe the background, what makes me different than you, we can share those knowledge and grow together.
Exactly.
As a community.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to paint a picture for me. How do you think that work, community, and family relationships would look if we lived in a world of ideal gender equity? Just in your sort of first image or idea you could think of. It doesn't have to be like the ultimate utopia.
Yeah, that's a hard one. So for me, what immediately jumps out for me when you ask that question is, there would be sort of that eradication in pay gaps for women. And I say that just because of where I also am in my professional career. So, that would be, there are no very significant gaps between what women and men may get paid. And there will be also, if you think about, I think you mentioned family, there wouldn't be any, those traditional gender roles, and we wouldn't always be reverting to those traditional gender roles as a woman does this in the house and the man does this in the house, and, and sort of blurring the gap there. So effectively there would be, like, the utopian state is obviously there would be no discrimination. Equality would prevail. But I mean, that that's probably some time away, maybe in my children's generation, or hopefully we can get closer to that state. But there would be essentially no limitation on what we can achieve. There would be no barriers. There would be no ceilings. There would be no red tape. There would be no imposter syndrome. There would be none of that exists. And so we'd all have equal access to health and opportunity. There would be no genderization, if you will. Don't think that's a word, but in terms of, playing sports, getting a job, all of those things would hopefully not exist.
I love that answer. And I also love what you had said in the last answer about getting rid of the imposter syndrome and the fact that a lot of the great ideas that happen at George Brown and in a lot of workspaces come from women. So in this ideal world, women would be able to acknowledge that, men would be able to acknowledge that, all genders would be able to acknowledge the contributions of all genders in that space without it being like someone's being too much or not right on the social balance of the day or whatever. So
yeah, for sure.
Who are some women or women's organizations that you think are doing great work to lead us more towards this ideal direction?
I can't really name any specific organizations. I think there's lots out there that focus on many different things. So I guess my best advice is just for individuals to do their own research and, maybe get involved with organizations that really align with your own values. Align with, some of the things that you want to achieve in your life or organizations that will propel you forward. I think that's just really the key thing in terms of just, getting involved in things that make sense to you. And there are many women at this college, George Brown. I was going to name them, but then I feel like I'll leave certain people out because I really have the unique opportunity to work with so many great women. So I think it's just important to surround yourself with really good, positive, inspiring women that will lift you up, that you can draw on in times of need, that you can maybe get mentorship from, coaching. There's so many ways that women can pull each other up and support each other. And so, yeah, I think that's the key thing. Just surround yourself with the greatness that women are, and all things will fall in place.
That sounds amazing. I love it.
Me too. Thank you so much for talking to us, for taking the time out of your day.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And also, are there any website or social media accounts that students can find you at?
Yeah, probably I would just say my LinkedIn account. So if you just find me, Kizzy Rodney, on LinkedIn, then you can follow me there. Those are pretty much my most public social handles.
That's amazing. So we can find you there. And also, thank you so much for your perspective and taking the time to join us today. Thank you, Claire, as well. Thank you for being here. And it was an amazing episode today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and go and send love and appreciation to the women in your life. Until next time, have a great week.